Facebook. And boom, we are ready to go, rock and roll. Don't you just like that when things sort of work out? We had to switch around a few things this morning, but that is okay. We have flexibility. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Thursday, and you know what that means. It's Trending Thursday. So much to talk about what's trending, but I'm Carol Sue, aka Naughty Boss, live from a bright, sunny Vero Beach with two
Sisters. Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Janice, aka Wellness Diva 5.0. And typically, as everybody knows, if you view this live, if you view it on YouTube, I typically have my hair up like all the time.
I noticed that.
Back of my head is so sore right now. From always, wearing the combs. And what I noticed yesterday too, and obviously I still need to make an appointment with my hairdresser, and Sharon is dying to get her hands on my head of hair. Just saying. I can't believe how long my hair is.
Yes, it's getting very, very long. And you're right. You probably don't even realize that because it's always up. So
right. Even though I wash it and I comb it out.
That look that you got going on, many people have that look. I could not carry that look. And as a matter of fact, the joke of through the virus 15 months or whatever you want to call it, I don't like calling it the P word, because I don't really think it was a P word. It was very real. It impacted a lot of people, but I think that's a whole other story. However, a lot of people always complimented me and said, how do you, obviously, for the first few months in Florida, things were shut down to a certain degree. We were never shut down in the mannerism of most of the country. And how did I manage that? Because I'm faithful. I go like every 4 weeks, because I believe that gray belongs in a crayon or somewhere else. It doesn't belong on my head. So I love, there's a few products out there that are the spray that you can just spray it in your root area, because that's obviously the growth that you see. So I never really had that problem. A lot of people come say, is your hairdresser coming to the house? I'm like, because they know I have hairdressers everywhere. Look, depending on what state I'm in, what I need done, they're available. And I think every girl should have that. You should make sure that if there's a state that you frequent often, to make sure you've got connections so you have options, right? Options. And speaking of that, that is what's trending. Options on so many things. The first thing that comes to mind from a celeb trending piece, obviously, is Brittany Spears. She's been all over the news. She's been trying desperately, I believe it's been for 13 years, to get off of this conservative ship that she got suckered into by her nasty, mean old dad, which is so sad, because we were so blessed to have an amazing man as a father figure, as a role model, as a male figure. And when I was really listening to the different pieces, I frequently, get those kinds of updates. I'm not a big celebrity alert person. I could care less. For me, they wake up the same way we do every morning. They have the same issues that we have. Maybe they're a little bit bigger, because obviously more money, we talk about that. More money means more problems if you don't have the right mindset, for sure. But I was really impressed with how, at least from what was reporting, on how on point she was with the judge. She was very candid, very, this is going to be long. I am tired of this. I want my life back. Now, I look at things twofold, because I think, sometimes you got to look at things through different lenses to get different perspectives, right? So we know that characteristically with someone that is suffering, that is in recovery, whether it's a drug addiction or alcohol addiction, sometimes they're not always truthful. Sometimes it takes a while for them to go through a whole process to kind of make peace for the harm that they've done. There's a whole certain set of steps that they take to reach that pivotal moment. So the interesting piece that I thought and what was trending was the fact that she, I believe, was doing a show in Vegas, and she was on point. She goes, I wasn't good. I was great. Like she just knew that she, her body and mind were in the right place. And apparently the information that I, kind of dabbled in listening to was that there was a dancer. She didn't like her moves or something about the dancer was not fitting in with the routine or whatever. So she said like, bye-bye, ciao, ciao, go, go. So at that moment, they said that there was some sort of meeting that took place with these people and reported back to the people that are part of her conservatorship. And they the doctor ended up prescribing a medication that she said, I felt drunk. I did not feel good. I did not want to take this. And I thought that was a pivotal point in the whole piece for me was, too often we hear of celebrities getting drugged up, by doctors that are on a high payroll, that are celebrity doctors. And, whether they're pressured to do this from the people that are holding the purse strings, literally, I'm not really sure. But so that was trending a lot last night. I don't know, did you hear any? I've got one more trending piece, really big, but did you hear any of that?
No, I haven't heard any of that. And actually, I haven't technically watched the news the last few days. And yeah, I haven't heard that. So I will definitely look into that.
Yeah, you got to check it out because it really was such a great piece to hear that she's trying to control her life, which she should. When you think about her situation versus, hardened criminals, in particular, I can think of one family that's a hardened criminal. Sadly, he lost his life. So I want to make sure that, we're not disregarding that piece to it. But he led a very hard life, career criminal. And that is a phrase, people, career criminal. There are some people that are career criminals. And now, they got plentiful of money from a state. And yet this poor girl, and I say she's a poor girl because, she's the one with the talent. She's the one that's working hard. We already know that people that are the elitists of Hollywood or whatnot, they beat to a different drum. But that does not take away that her talent and the hard work that she puts into her craft, which is an entertainment. And the fact that you have people that are pushing a narrative that might not necessarily be all that truthful. So I give her a lot of kudos on that. So that was one of the huge things that was, going around as far as, what's trending. There was also actually two more things that were trending. There was, it's the Xeno gym. A lot of people are getting the Xeno gym. I have a Xeno gym. It's this little piece of equipment, very spongy, very, you can use it for, it's kind of the same material of a bench, a weight bench, and the different apparatuses. So I was watching tons of different new exercises with bands and resistant training. And all of a sudden, it's just boom, all of a sudden I'd get notifications. And I thought, okay, is this trending? Or is my phone spying on me? What do you think?
Well, whenever you put in a search engine something that you're looking for, it will show up in your feed, in your social media feeds, in ads. For instance, when you visit a website, maybe you're searching out for a product, and those specific things that you were previously looking for are in the ad section.
That is true. And the thing was, I wasn't even looking at it. What I was doing was, because they frequently will have videos on different new exercises that you can do. So I was actually watching YouTube. So I'm wondering if YouTube is infiltrating my phone as well. I mean, a lot of people talk about that. You'll say, oh, I think my phone is spying on me. Of course it's spying on you. Of course, because you can't make this just up. The other big thing that is trending, of course, is CRT, critical race theory. And I truly believe that critical race theory is starting to fall apart. Jerry Seinfeld, I'm talking to my cat right now. You go near that couch, I'm going to kill you. He likes to go after my couch. You do that and you're in trouble. You're going to have to leave my office. I don't know how he got in here. He's invading my space. Yes, you are. I'm talking to my cat. Anywho, CRT, critical race theory, I believe is really on the verge of popping out in disintegration, because there is something to say when you have passionate parents and they think that you're going to do their child harm. Let me repeat that again. You bring out a lion, you bring out a tiger, you bring out a lioness when you start messing with children's parents, families' children's. You start messing with people's grandchildren. That is like the ultimate, I'm going after you, mother effer. I wonder how that will translate in Facebook. I'll have to check that out, mother effer. I don't know, we'll have to see how closed caption comes up with that. But anywho, I want to give a shout out, as most people know, especially if you're on my personal page, which a lot of things are public, that I've been pushing and push on enlightening people on what CRT is and what it is not, because a lot of people are confusing the two. So one of the things last night that occurred, there was a school committee meeting in Charlton, Massachusetts, where obviously my family is from, and I have grandchildren there. And they, the parents there, were hearing some certain things that they were not really sure which way the district was going with curriculum, and why all of a sudden there was this, what they call equity committee formed. So parents got together, including, and I was included in this, and to try to find out the nitty gritty, I'm gonna just adjust my chair, the nitty gritty of what is happening in schools. And the one common denominator I had when really doing some research on CRT, they call it critical race theory, and PS, critical race theory has been around for 80 or 90 years. I have now renamed it as critical racism theory. We are in a critical racist push when there's no need to push it. Should we be enlightened about it? Is it injustice? Absolutely, of course, just like there are many injustices in the world. But the narrative is, anti-racism, but, push an agenda with racism. So it's like butting heads. It doesn't make sense to me. So I've renamed it critical racism, racist theory, because it is. It's racism. It's teaching racism about racism with racism. So what has been trending, obviously, is school boards across the United States are being approached, having meetings and parents attending the meeting. Some of them are getting a little cray-cray. So my first advice, if you're going to be an advocate for children's rights, if you're going to be an advocate for your own child or your grandchild, maybe you have a special interest in the educational system. Maybe you're just a caring person that really takes on, being an advocate for children. Go in there with respect, go in there composed, go in there postured. Articulate. Make sure that, whatever statement you are reading is on point, direct, questions, because when you do, you will see a totally different outcome. So within the last 2 days, we've seen a lot of school committees going on. If you haven't seen it on the news or social media, get under the rack. It's kind of one of those things that you have to be, there's the monster. You have to be very, in tune to what is going on, especially within a school system, right? Because that is impacting the health and well-being of our children, our future, our future doctors, our future lawyers, our future politicians, our future people that are going to be involved in the community. So a lot is at stake, people. A lot is at stake when you're talking about children and impacting their minds and their hearts. With that said, I've been really promoting that this meeting was taking place last night to get people involved, to engage people, to go fight for their children, but to also fight and get some answers, which, by the way, they got no answers yesterday. They did not get one answer last night. However, what they did get was a lot of confused school committee members that did not apparently know what was going on their website, don't really have a grasp on what's going on with this equity committee. A lot of contradictory statements versus what email said. So hopefully that they will collaborate for the well-being of children and get their shista together. But I was super, super proud of how the parents presented themselves. We had formed a group, and it's been amazing because we've got some experts within the group that are really showcasing an outline. Because if you don't know what you don't know, you're going to go in there like a meatball. So I'm going to say that again. If you don't know what you don't know, you're going to go in there like a meatball. You have to do the due diligence to know what you're chatting about, to investigate, and to ask those hard questions. Because if you don't, things happen in a certain chronological order on purpose. It's a playbook, folks. It's sad to think that our local government, our bigger government, school system, any big conglomerate always has a playbook. And they're always going to have one up on you if you don't do your own due diligence to understand. So what is CRT and what is not? I've been telling you a lot what CRT is, but let me tell you what it is not. Because a lot of parents made that mistake, not only with this particular school board, just a few of them, and it's not no fault of their own. It's just a matter of educating and understanding what CRT is and what CRT is not, and across the board. CRT is not a class, is not a course, okay? It is not an added curriculum course that they are adding. It is a untested, unproven, and no factual based theory that white people are privileged. They were born this way. They should be ashamed that they were, because their ancestors are part of systemic racism across the world. And we should feel guilty about that. And you are an oppressor. Regardless, if you're 5 years old, can you imagine telling a 5-year-old, you're an oppressor? And also telling a 5-year-old that's not white, you're oppressed. You're going to amount to nothing. Because that 5-year-old over there has an advantage, such an advantage over you. You're gonna amount to nothing. So the point being is CRT is not a course. It is an ideology. It is a theory. It is key phrases to trigger changing the course of how people think and how they respond. So a lot of parents are not grasping that piece to it. It is not a course, folks. It is an infiltration and indoctrination into the hearts and minds of children that will infiltrate how they think, but also question, because they're going to hear one message and their parents are going to be teaching another. Their church is going to, CRT is a direct contradictory of parental involvement, parental input, parenting, and also faith, regardless of what your faith is. Whether you're Christian, it doesn't matter what your faith is. If you believe in a higher power, higher God, it is in direct contradiction with that. And it's also in a direct contradiction with parents being parents, parenting. So how do they go about doing that? Well, in this particular school district, they formed, and it's a playbook. They have a playbook. Automatically what they're going to do, you will find that maybe a new superintendent is hired, which in this case, a new superintendent was hired 2 years ago. Then all of a sudden there'll be another possible superintendent, which all of a sudden a year later, which was in June of 2020, a assistant superintendent was now on the payroll. Then you might have maybe new principals coming in. All of a sudden there's some new books being purchased, the curriculum, because it's twofold. It's also about CSE, comprehensive sexual ed, so CSE, how to get that right, which is also another piece, not directly about CRT, but it's also kind of intertwined. They're calling it a comprehensive sex ed, where they're purchasing books with very explicit information that most parents, most God-given parents that just humanity, good people, do not want a teacher infiltrating their child's brain with information that they don't think is age appropriate. Now, I'm going to be really clear. I am not saying that sex education does not need to be taught. Absolutely, of course it does, but it's age appropriate. And you better be, heads up to these school committees and these educational board systems, heads up people, you better start learning how to partner and partnership correct with the parents. Because that is one area that while we cannot control, we already talked about that, so much over the last 15 months, we cannot control what goes on in our outside world. We cannot control, how a certain person acts. We cannot control, what people are trying to do, or government's trying to do, or your local government, but we sure as hell can take action when we find that we feel that there's harm being taken place to our youth, our babies, our precious cargo that are someday going to be leaders in our communities and in our world. So I want to be very clear on what CRT is not. It is not a course. And if you start noticing some changes, you need to get involved. You need to go to your school board meeting and you have to ask those questions. So I want to say kudos and shout out to these parents, because when the one that was obviously all over the internet was Virginia. Virginia had, I believe they said 225. Now Virginia's a pretty big state, and even that particular township or whatever they want to call it, it's pretty big. Well, the little district that I'm talking about in Charlton/Dudley had 80 parents, citizens showing up. So from a percentage perspective, that was excellent. And what it did was actually enlighten, I think, the school board to a certain degree, so much so, and they realized, wow, you know, some of the, not all, but some of the board members were like, we need to listen to these parents. We need to give them their own meeting, because they couldn't get on the agenda. And the only way that they could address this school committee was through the citizens forum. So the citizens forum, for those that don't know, and this is why I'm also going to encourage parents, if you're going to go want to speak to your school board, make sure you know when the date is, and make sure ahead of time that you get on the agenda. Because in the state of Massachusetts, I know they have what's called Citizens Forum. So that was the only avenue for these parents to collectively go and talk and ask questions. They could not really necessarily get answers back. There was no like debate, and they kind of outlined the rules. But it did create dialogue amongst even the school committee to say, wait a minute. And there was a few that were really for the parents to say, look, they've got some serious concerns. So the one key piece that's trending, and I want to make sure that all parents and anyone that's fighting for children's rights know, if your school all of a sudden, out of the blue, unbeknownst to you, you find out that they're having a equity committee, which I cannot, equity is such a nice word, and they're using it in such a bad way. Equity committee, find out the data on why it originated. What led them to come up to the decision to create a equity committee? Is there data that supports this? So in other words, what data would support any school to form and create an equity committee? Well, if you're in an area, and this is where, you know, people have to understand, there are certain areas in certain states that, you know, racism may be a little bit more heightened than, say, in a rural area. You have to know your audience and where you're gearing towards, right? So if you have an area that, you know, maybe has high crime or it's probably, and I'm going to back that up by saying, I do not think that we are a country of systemic racism. We are not. And those that are pushing that agenda are absolutely wrong. There's actually no data and facts to prove that. But does racism exist? It absolutely does, but it's not as prevalent as people are pushing it as. So does that fit the narrative? Does that fit the area that you live in? Ask the question, what data supports our school district to form an equity committee? What would that data look like? Well, usually there are incidences, there might be reports. We all know, I mean, like you talked about yesterday, Jan, we all know bullying exists. Bullying has been going on since the test of time. You know, when back in the day, when we were bullied, it, you know, is a lot softer. It's more about name calling or, you know, oh, we're not going to play with her. She thinks she's all that, or she's not one of the cool gang. Or you may bully somebody that, you know, looks different, acts differently, but it wasn't to the extent that it is today. And that is because a lot of it is social media driven. Let's be real. And let's be honest, the internet. So you have to like take into consideration the things that are truly going on in this world. So bullying does exist. However, there are steps in place now at school districts and even at work, you know, because adults bully too, that you can have an incident report. You know, that if you had I don't know, maybe you had a student body of 1,200, let's say, and you got 300 or 400 incidences, you got a problem. So maybe you need to address it. So, but most people don't have that. So that's one of the key pieces. What is the data that supports you to create this equity committee? Because the playbook of CRT, and there's a playbook, as I said, they hire a new super, they might hire a new assistant, all of a sudden you get somebody that's in charge of learning and development. It's a new title, apparently, that a lot of assistants are getting, learning and development. Well, what does that mean? Okay, well, introducing new curriculum, whether it's books that has to do with comprehensive sex education, or whether it's a controlled mindset of what we want to infiltrate, indoctrinate your child with. So those are some of the things that you have to ask. They're not going to get done alone. They're not going to get done by one person. But guess what? It only takes one person to create that energy. And I applaud the 80 parents that went to this meeting. The presentations were remarkable, so much so that they are now having an open forum that will have to have a moderator and get to the root of some hard questions, because a lot of this, they didn't get answers last night. They didn't get any because they were stuck in the box. Remember, CRT's got 2 boxes. Well, the school committee had a box. It was called the Citizens Forum. So you can ask a question. You weren't going to get an answer. You could make a statement that you might get a little interaction with that. But what it did do, it did serve a purpose last night, even though they didn't get the answers that they wanted, is that now that they have a new meeting set up specifically and designed for parents to ask questions directly to the Board of Education, to the school committee. So it was a success. So when parents say, oh, or a citizen says, oh, what can one person do? What can a few people do? You can do a lot, especially when it's gathered together in a postured, articulate manner where you're not going to come off as a bunch of cray-crays, but that you're still passionate and that you're still, inserting your desire to protect your child. So that's what's trending. And I'm so happy for those parents that saw a little glimmer of success last night.
That's good, and kudos to those parents. Them showing up made a difference.
Absolutely.
So glad to hear that. So Trending Thursday, so much to cover, so little time. There's so much I could say on CRT. Systemic morons.
Oh, I kind of like that. SM.
That's right. Like, if people would live by the golden rule.
Yes.
Think of how
Amen.
much as a nation, in our own communities, in our own households, think of what everyone could accomplish.
So much so. And actually that was because I submitted a statement. And actually, I'm just going to read you that last line because since you brought that up. Transparency and a trusted partnership is essential between parents and teachers. And my hope is that all can work together with the goal in mind of safety and learning for all children. In closing, I believe every child should be taught the one curriculum that stands out the test of time, does not segregate, does not look at a person's skin color or cause division. That curriculum is the golden rule. So see how funny are the sisters? We always think alike, because that is true. Treating people the way that you want to be treated. And you know what? The other interesting piece to it, I think if you were to poll children, and a few people have already done that, just having that conversation with their children, and you ask them the question, geez, if you're playing with, Marianne, and Marianne's skin color is darker than yours, or you're playing with, Susie and she is Chinese or, Asian descent of some sort, or, she's Marguerite, is from Venezuela. I would bet you that most children are going to be looking at you with 3 eyeballs. I only see my friend. I only see my girlfriend. I only see my playmate. Oh, I love her because she's so much fun, or he's so much fun. So they don't look at things through this propaganda lens that people want them to look at. And why is that? Children can also teach adults. Maybe these adults that are pushing these kinds of agendas need a lesson and a course from the children.
Amen. And on that note, Wow, trending Thursday, so much trending. My name is Janice, aka Wellness Diva 5.0, along with the little monster who's not feeling so good. And I am with two.
TwoSistas, and this is Carol Sue, aka Naughty Boss, live from a gorgeous Vero Beach. It is sunny, and today, yes, I'm finally going to get my pickleball on. I'm super excited about that. I'm super pumped. It is Trending Thursday. One thing that we can share with you is you be the trendsetter. You show people how things can go down, attract other people, and also kind of like trickle down to make you do something, whether it's fitness, whether it's health, whether it's wellness, whether it's practicing the golden rule. We will see you tomorrow on Friday's podcast, which is all about Fantabulous Friday. You guys have a great Trending Thursday.
Bye, everyone.